So I had mentioned a while back the whole concept of Namlik Sufu, which is but a shame and why we really need that and so on, you know. Okay, the Ramchal continues with the whole purpose of creation. So he says, "Ulam gozu chochmosoi," that in order for the toiv to be good, perfect, that the one therefore who will actually receive this toiv, this good, Bala toivahu, he should be the owner of that good. Now, what that means is that he should actually be what's an owner? He should be one who acquired it, okay, that he caused this toiv. You know, ownership doesn't necessarily mean the concept, but what he says here, Perish, mi sheyitna toiv be'atzmoi, lo mishislav lo ha'toiv b'derech mikra. You know, there are many things that we are born with. We never acquired it. It's not due to our cause. We didn't do anything for it. We just have it. People are born. You know, they have their attributes, their characteristics. They're born with that. They're lucky. You know, genetics, whatever, and so on, you know. But it can never be said that they acquired it in and of themselves. It's something which is associated with their, what's called b'mikra, by chance. It's associated with them, you know.
What, like learning and getting
intelligence
as an acquired toiv?
No, an intelligence. Some people are very intelligent when they're born.
I'm saying, well, what do you mean by acquiring toiv?
Well, you don't. We do not acquire our characteristics in many ways. We are born with a certain temperament.
If we worked on a need, that means acquiring toiv?
Where?
When we what's he talking? What do you mean? What do you mean that he's kind of toiv? What's the
that he acquires it means he expends efforts.
Oh, you put in effort to get it.
And as a result of that, he's got it.
The Rabbi gives him more knowledge and more chokhmah.
Yeah, whatever.
Or better midas or something.
Yeah. So there's two ways. If somebody is in a situation, there are two reasons why he's in that situation, right? Either it just happened to happen to him, not because he did anything, or he expended efforts to acquire that, and therefore he's got it.
And that's real toiv, I'm saying.
Well, that's Bala toiv. In other words, that whatever he has is associated with him, not b'mikra, by accident or by chance, but what he called b'avoida. He actually caused that to happen to him, or he's responsible, and so on. If somebody becomes, let's say,
does a good deal and he makes a profit.
Yeah, if somebody becomes a Talmud Chacham, it's because he sat and learned, not because he grew up and he was born being a Talmud Chacham. There are two reasons why a person will have specific attributes or characteristics, right? One or the other. So what the Rebbeinu Shem wants is if he creates an Olam Haba first, or rather only, without an Olam Hazeh, without this world. There's a future world. And then this guy all of a sudden he's created, and he finds himself in this unbelievable situation, which is this infinite good, infinite bliss, and so on. So he's receiving this. I didn't do anything for this. You know, it's great. It's great to be in.
And the only people who can have Olam Haba are people who went through Olam Hazeh.
Yes, that's right.
There's no new breeze.
No, the only ones.
Olam Haba starts.
Yeah, the only ones who are b'mikra are the malachim. They're the only ones who receive, because there's a tremendous amount of honor being in the presence of God, and the Bershom is Niskala, is revealed. So they have this. They're not the Bala toiv. They are not the ones who acquire this through their own efforts. You know what I'm saying? But all other beings, the neshamas, that are someday inhabit the human body, all of them, the only reason why they get to Olam Haba is if they have something to do with what they are in, and that is they have to cause it, or they have to be responsible for it in some way, So they could say, well, the reason why I have this is because I expended efforts to do it. You see, in other words, I actually contributed or caused it or responsible for it. That's what he said. So what the Russian decided is that the only way to get Olam Haba, as in a neshama, in a body, so to speak, is you've got to do something to cause that which will happen to you. You need to cause it. It will not happen to you by accident. That's a very, very important condition.
So a situation that I came across had a big ashram.
Yeah.
Someone I used to go to shir to. He was born with a child who was not functional.
Go ahead, yeah.
Not functional, and eventually put into a nursing home.
The child.
The child.
Yeah.
And she lived to be 33 years old, and then she was...
And she lived to be 33 years old?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she was never... They tried till the age of 2 or 3 to make a functional... She doesn't put it... She never put any effort into anything.
Well, she...
Well, tell me it was a Gilgal from a different neshama.
Yes. Is that what you... Yeah. So
you have to say that.
What's happening to her now is not related or connected to anything she did. A 3-year-old kid that dies.
So this is a cheshbon... Okay, but I'm saying there's no schar for that, for something like that in this person.
Is a Gilgal previously...
You have to say it was a Gilgal.
She has to come back
because
and
it's
to
not a person not capable of doing the effort.
Yeah. It's not, this type of life, and it's unfortunately tragic actually, is an individual whose sole purpose basically is to come back and atone for what she did, or whoever, he or she did in a previous life. There is no other explanation really, That's one of the proof of Gilgulim. Because if the Bershom is a mishpat, if the Bershom is fair and just, you know how many kids are in children's hospitals? Infants suffer and so on, and what do? So obviously it has to refer back to some other time when they lived, and therefore they suffered. Obviously. So what he's saying now, which is very important, is that Olam Haba depends on your actions. Period. Now, in order for that to happen, as we will see, you have to have free will. You know what I'm saying? Fine. It depends on my efforts. But what happens if the efforts are compelled? There's no free will behind it, right? So we're back to the same idea. Well, you didn't do it because you wanted to do it. You're not a cause. Whoever compelled you is the cause. That doesn't make any sense. So therefore, clearly this necessitates certain ideas. One of them is free will. What is free will? What does it really mean? I'm getting into the whole idea. Free will simply means that the decision to act is yours. The Bershom did not plant any idea, any decision on your part. Somehow you created the decision out of nowhere without any input from the Rebbeinu Shalom. God has no input into your decision. Once the decision to act is made, then he may stop you from doing it. And the actual action itself is up to him. Right. But the decisions to do it, right, is purely up to you.
Someone says that if you want to blame it on your prior, like what all the psychologists say, because his upbringing, his background and everything, says, but actually that decision is still your choice. In other words, you could say that it wasn't my fault, and I killed him because that's all I know.
No, it's your decision.
You still have to make that decision at the final point.
Of course, yeah. And that decision is uncompelled.
Different levels of decision, depending on what the guy's background is, but yes,
whatever his motives are and so on.
Yeah. Are there different degrees? Like, let's say it's through classical conditioning. A man steals 3 times, gets arrested, goes to jail 3 times. On that reason, from an outside force, he decides not to steal a 4th time.
It's his decision.
He's afraid of the punishment. Not
fine,
that.
That's okay.
That's valid.
Whatever his incentives to decide a certain way. Obviously we're not having anybody else. Whatever his reasons for his decision doesn't make a difference. He still has to decide what to do, and so on. So if his incentive is negative, let's say all of a sudden he has a tremendous urge, taiva, it's still your decision. You can combat the taiva or you can give into it. It's still your decision. But the essential idea that the Ramchal is saying is that you need to decide freely, and therefore you are considered a cause exactly of your future situation. That's a very important, what's called caveat or condition. Why is that so important? Because there's a risk. What happens if once you have to decide, once Olam Haba is up to you, right? What happens if you fail? It's a risk. What happens if you fail? And you all of a sudden, you decide to, let's say, sin, whatever. So what does that mean? You failed. I mean, it's a risk. So it's true, obviously, what we mentioned is that there's no named sufa because you are responsible for the decision you make, so there's no embarrassment, there's no bread of shame, as we said, right? But still, it's a risk. So one can always ask, it would be interesting to ask a person, well, would you rather have an infinite bliss eternally, which is really what Olam Haba is all about? However, there's one of two ways. Either you can go, I'll send you down to earth, and you gotta go through all kinds of trials and tribulations, right? And in the end, if you choose well, you get Olam Haba. So so what? And the answer is, I get Olam Haba. It's purely as a result of my input, effort, which means that I'm no longer embarrassed to receive something for nothing, especially eternally. Or would you rather be born, in Olam Haba, and you just, you're on the receiving end?
I think most people would say that.
Yeah.
They'd rather win the lottery and be finished.
Yeah, the guy can say, listen, I'll deal with the embarrassment. Just give me the goodies. So the real question is, that's why ultimately speaking, it's a mystery, I mean, I personally think that most people would say, okay, I mean, I'd rather, it's nice to do efforts and so on, you're right, but listen, there's an incredible risk. Not only is there a risk if I ever will get Olam Haba, the risk is also how much will I get? Maybe a guy's going to get Olam Haba, he's a member, he's in the club, he gets Olam Haba, but okay, you get half. But I only tell you something, half is beyond belief anyway, you know what I'm saying? But, so there's a risk in getting Olam Haba, since you need to cause your own situation, Olam Haba, and there's a risk in how much, and so on. Besides the fact that as part of the risk, if I don't do it, and even if I do the wrong things and then have to atone, there's all kinds of suffering involved, all that kind of stuff. I would imagine that most people would vote, just give me the good stuff and forget about the cause, so I won't be the Baal HaTeva. So what? That's why it says in Pirkei Avos, Akocha to Neulad. Because maybe if he asked you, you would have said, no, I don't want this, I want freebies. Don't give me this work business, I want freebies, So, Bershom, Al-Kocha to Neulad means what? Not Kocha to Neulad. It doesn't say Al-Kocha to Nimsa. Neulad, which means that you don't have to force a guy to exist and have Olam Haba for the rest of the eternity. But you do have to force a guy probably to say, okay, I'm willing to take the risk in order to what? To cause my Olam Haba. And as long as, and therefore I will be the responsible party, and I will not in any way experience any feelings of lack of self-worth, lack of embarrassment, and so on, or, all the feelings that come with just being on the receiving end all the time. Maybe that's why it says Akorcha, because most people not choose that. But anyway, so that's a tremendous risk. But the Russians decided that. So obviously that's a major, major decision. I mean, we look around the world today. How many people are getting Olam Haba anyway? You look around today, there's 7 billion people on this planet.
Most of them are going.
In the year 2013, right? How many people are getting Olam Haba? They all muffed up, as they say. They bombed. So to a guy, imagine you walk over to, let's say Hitler Machshamoy, and say, there's no Olam Haba, So he would have clearly had chosen, just give me this thing, and but you look around today, there's an enormous amount of evil today, and how many guys get Olam Haba really? A lot of guys miss the boat. So they clearly would have preferred to get Olam Haba, and not be responsible for it. It's too bad, as they say, what is it, the Russian calls the shots. And that's what he decided. That's his rules of the game, game plan, game rules and so on. So in a certain sense, that's bothersome. That if you look in the totality of all the human beings that ever lived in mankind, You know, we have 7 billion today, and you go back all the totality, talking about billions and billions and billions, tens of billions of people that have lived over the centuries, over the millennium, you know. How many of them get Olam Haba really? So was it worth it just for the few guys or whatever, relatively speaking? You wonder, for those guys who get Olam Haba at whatever level, you know, most people don't. Whatever, was it worth this? The whole it's like a contest. You gotta do your thing to get the reward and so on. You know, there's a lot. It's a lot of difficulties.
See what happened with me?
What? Yeah.
The whole every.
Well, no, schakul. No, doesn't mean he took all the reward. Doesn't mean no. You have to understand what that means. Not schakul means that he is responsible for bringing the reward to everybody, but they can still get reward based on their acts. But what he does is Avram Avinu becomes the only one who can rectify creation. So he took all the capacity to receive the reward of mankind. He's the one who will decide what amount of reward there will be. You see. But let's say they're goyim, who are very good, they're righteous, There are many goyim that are righteous and so on and so forth, and the Baruch will give them Olam Haba. But they can't bring it. The Jews are the only one who do the tikkun, which is the rectification of creation, and therefore creation is rectified, and Olam Haba begins. You see what I'm saying? But they can still get it based on the acts of the Jews. That's what it means. It doesn't mean that they don't get any reward, no. But when you look at all the people that ever lived, I'd love to hear that statistic from the Varsham. Of every neshama you created, right? What's the percentage that gets Olam Haba? What's the percentage that gets into Olam Haba? I'm not even asking how many really get a decent. Everybody gets a decent level, because Olam Haba is a place that the magnitude of the hano, the pleasure and the bliss is beyond comprehension for the lowest level. Forget about the highest level. You see, But the real question is, how many people get it? It's a good question, So, and the question then is, for all those people that don't get it, they clearly would have preferred that this should not be the condition, So was it worth for those people who get in to Olam Haba, right? And they get in without a namdik sufa, without any type of shame. Was that worth it? That whole scenario worth it? Meanwhile, there's billions of people that are gone. They get nothing, which means that they're annihilated. There's no such thing as outside of Olam Haba. There's nothing going on outside of Olam Haba, which is important to know. There is, as I say, there is no other show in town besides Olam Haba. Once Olam Haba starts, that means even Gehenna ends. Once Olam Haba begins, there is no such thing as Gehenna. It's over. There's no such thing as kapara. Everything has already been decided. It's been done, and now here comes, utopia, whatever you want to call it. You know what I'm saying? So that's the question in many ways. Was this whole program worth it for those people? Obviously, the Baruch decided it is worth it, and that's why he did it. I'm sure he took that into account. Ultimately, we don't understand really why we have to go through this. Anyway, but the Ramchal tries to talk about that.
A quick question.
Yeah.
I don't know how valid it is. Somewhere a long time ago I read that the Baal Shem Tov had a dream. He saw neshamas going up and down.
Yeah.
And he said that from what he saw, that if Hashem saw the slightest remorse whatsoever, they were in. That was
okay, but the remorse is his decision. It's still his decision.
The neshama.
The person.
Oh, okay.
It's his decision to regret what he did, and therefore he feels remorseful. You decided, that's a schus, that's a merit, you're in, at whatever level.
Is there something said that when someone's that close to seeing the Ribono Shel Olam right in front of them, they're still rebellious, they don't surrender, they don't negate themselves?
Well, that's what it was showing, even if when you're Pischa Gehenim,
they say you take your midas along with you. You take your midas with you to Yenadon.
Well, some of the time. But anyway, so that's what it says. Now, Batira, so he's got to explain. Well, why do you have to be a Baal Teva? Why does it have to be there for you? Because you earned it, or you expended effort. Shezen nikra ksas his damus. This is called a resemblance. Why? And he says, in other words, what the Russian wants is you need to resemble me. What does that mean? Okay. The Russian is perfect. Why? Not the mikveh. The Russian's perfection flows from himself. It's in a certain sense like he causes himself. He is the cause of his own perfection, whatever that means. You know what I'm saying? It's not because the Russian woke up one day and says, wow, I'm a perfect being. You know, he wasn't created by anything. He always was, always will be, right, and is, right? So the Russian's perfection isn't something that he just happens to have. But the reason why he has his perfection is because perfection in God is absolutely necessary, which means it's compelled. The Russian is a being where his perfection is compelled, that he is compelled to be perfect. Not by somebody else, but by his own being. His own being compels that perfection. And also all the negations of chesronos or deficiencies. Remember, God has no limits, no deficiencies at all, and no dependencies. He's not limited in any way, right? He's not choser anything, he's not deficient anything, you know what I'm saying? And he's not dependent on any other thing other than himself. So God causes his own perfection, so to speak, because that's who he is. Okay? So therefore, he wants you to resemble that. You see, where you have to cause whatever your situation is. So therefore, the resemblance is what? Is that if you do what he wants, right? And that's up to you. You've caused your own perfection. That's what he wants. The dimyan, the damas loy means he wants to resemble him in a certain sense, to be godlike. That's really what it means. A being that can cause is a true cause of its own perfection is godlike. Even if in the end, Olam Haba, we receive Olam Haba, obviously. But a person can say, well, the only reason why I'm receiving Olam Haba at all is because I expended the effort. Even though the constant state of receivership is purely b'mikra. I don't do anything. God has given me anything, everything. I didn't do a thing. You know what I'm saying? So therefore, this is what the Ramchal says. Now that is, in certain ways, I've never seen anybody explain, why do we have to resemble him? That's so what? Like, what does that mean we have to resemble him? Why is that necessary? Ramchal doesn't mention Namlik Sufa here at all, which is interesting. See, he mentions a concept called resemblance, that you have to be godlike, which means that you have to be a true cause of your own situation or matzav. That's godlike. Because God causes his own perfection. You need to cause your own perfection also. Now I had explained some of the ideas as a result of Namlik Sufa, bread of Shem, in a previous year, you know. Because, you know, if you remember that previous year. But in any case, but that a person, just for the purposes of resembling God, why? I'm okay if I don't resemble God. Because anyway, 99.99% is not a resemblance anyway. You know what I'm saying? Because the whole concept of receivership or receptivity of the hashpah of God is all reception anyway. You know what I'm saying? It's because we are dependent on God totally. It's not, that in itself is not clear. Okay? Why Dimyan is so critical. What?
But if in a certain sense the Rebbeinu Shalom is the essence of midas, perfect midas.
Well, he's perfect. He's perfect.
Well, he's a perfect, but in the realm of Yud Gimel midas, whatever you want to call that.
Yeah.
Okay. And in Anova and Chesed and all these type of things. So wouldn't the kicking that we have to do would be to emulate the Rebbeinu Shalom, because that's what his perfection is?
Say that again?
wouldn't the ticking be to go, you know, the halachta b'dracha, if you want to call it, to go to his way, because that's basically what his essence is.
Yeah, but why is that a necessity to resemble him? How do you connect the two? That
As
it's
opposed to
necessary
what?
to resemble him, and then, right? Then you get your Ilam Haba.
What would be the other? What would be the other choice?
Not to resemble him, but just give me everything without doing anything. No effort.
Why would you? Why would? But for what purpose?
For what purpose of what?
Would he give you all this stuff?
That's his will. We don't know why. His ratzon is to be native. That's his will.
But
You know.
isn't his derech the ultimate toiv?
It is.
So you to get toiv, you have to do what toiv is.
Yeah, but the question is, how does resemblance, what does that have to do with toiv? Resemblance, if A and B resemble each other, so what? So therefore, A and, well,
You need to tell me someone is a Russia, he could be Zaycha to toiv? He's the opposite of toiv.
No, you understand. We're talking about, the question is this. Why do I have to resemble the Rebbe to get Olam Haba? That's the question. What does resemblance do for me? Now, the resemblance itself is Bal HaTov. You need to be the true cause, right? That's the resemblance. And just like God is a true cause, this person is a true cause, right? But the question is, so what? The Ramchal does not talk about Namlik Sufa. He mentions the concept called resemblance. So the question is, what is the connection of resemblance to Ilam Haba? Why? What's the connection here? Why do you need A to get B?
If I have a machine,
Other
the
than
only
the
way
fact
I could
that
operate
his
that
desire
machine,
is that you have A.
I'm saying if I have a machine, the only way I could operate that machine is because I have a hand with 5 digits on it.
Yes, but that's the
So I
connection.
can't have any shyness to the machine unless I have the hand that can operate that machine. Otherwise, it's a worthless machine.
Yes, but in that case, we see the connection, your hand. Right? Your hand is the only instrumentation that you can use to work that machine. Guy doesn't have a hand, he can't do it.
That's like the hand.
No, but you're not explaining why is that a hand. We know that. We know that's the condition. But why is it? What's the connection? Why is this? Why do I have to resemble God to get Ilam Haba? What does it do for me? Why is that necessary? This is the
Is
question.
Hashem the only standard for what?
So if you say Namdik Sufo, so we understand, because if we don't have, if we're not the true cause, then we have this tremendous feeling, existential state of unbelievable embarrassment, unworthiness, etc., inferiority, everything that goes with it. So I understand the connection. But what does Dinyan have to do with this? What do I have to resemble God for? I mean, if I, you understand, what's the connection?
Is
That
he
is
the
the
only
question.
standard?
Between A and B, that's all.
So how do you understand that?
I don't. It's something which is, the Ramchal doesn't, he goes into, he elaborates on the concept of Dinyan, as a principle in and of itself, but he doesn't say why does it have to be a Dinyan. Okay, I'll resemble God. If I don't resemble God, I'll be glad to take the check without be resembling God. You know what I'm saying? Why is that so necessary?
But maybe the word wouldn't be tzugepas, it wouldn't be appropriate.
What makes it inappropriate? People who get welfare checks, do they have to resemble the guy the guy giving them the welfare check? The guy wins the lottery. Does he have to resemble the guy who's giving him money? What's resemblance have to do with this? If you talk about Namlik Suf as a principle, fine. But the Ramchal is not talking about Namlik Suf. He doesn't mention Namlik Suf here. He does mention it in the Das Tfunis.
If God is perfect.
But here he doesn't, you see, which is interesting. It's a different concept.
If God is perfect and complete, then any good that we resemble by default is going to be a resemblance to God. If God is a complete containment of everything, then anything that we could do to strive to be good is
No. He doesn't want you to resemble him, except in one way. You need to be the true cause.
I Christ.
No, I resemble. Yeah, I mean, I exist. He exists, so I resemble him. No, that's not what he's interested in. He wants you to be godlike, which means you have to be a true cause to your situation. That you are involved in the situation, not because you happen to be there. No, just like he is his own cause for his perfection, you need to be your own cause for perfection, which is that you are receiving unbelievable hashpah of God. You see, but the condition for that is dimyan. Why does he want? Because then you resemble him. It's true, but so what? That's the problem here. Problem is the Ramchal does not mention here the concept of nam netzufa. He does mention it in das funas and so on, But here he doesn't say but it's not fully elaborated here as to why this is critical. What's the connection? Anyway, so therefore the Ramchal says that because of this, that he wants you to resemble him, right? He needs to create an olam haba. He needs to create a situation, which is a dimension, in which there will be a necessity to expend effort. Well, you need to therefore there are certain what's called ground rules that need to be developed. One, as we'll see, you need to have a place where there's a deficiency. Because if everything's perfect, you got nothing to do. So what am I going to be a cause of? So you need to have a dimension, a situation, where there is some type of deficiency or lack or absence. Number one. Number two, the job then will be is to remove that deficiency. So we have a task, right? In order to be a cause of something, I need to have a task, which means I need to have something that has to be done, and I have to be able to do it. That's the second thing. Third thing is I have to have the wherewithal to do it. You tell me, how do I do it? Because I have the deficiency, right? I have the ability to fulfill or remove that deficiency, but I need the wherewithal. I need the instrument. Tell me how I'm to do it. That's number three. Number four, besides the fact that I have the deficiency and I have the ability to remove that deficiency, and I have wherewithal, I need free will, or else I'm not considered a real cause. So that's number four. Number five, well, okay, but what happens if I don't want to do anything? I need to, it's like...
So they're stuck in their deficiency, and then they end up thinking...
You need to have what's called drives. You see, you need to drive. You know what I'm saying? You need to be compelled to get into the arena and fight. A guy can say, don't bother me, I don't want to get into this arena. So what the Baruch does is he puts in you drives, urges. There's no way you can get around that. We all have an incredible amount of urges. It's called the Yetzer Haras, by the way, right? And so on. That's what I'm referring to. Why is there a Yetzer Hara? As a Yetzer Hara. I'm not talking about his other jobs, his Malchamos and Mekatrik, the prosecutor and so on. I'm talking about why do we have a Yetzer Hara? Well, forget, what is the Yetzer Hara? The Yetzer Hara is fundamentally drives. And therefore, why do we have drives? We have all kinds of drives that force us or compel us to interact with the world to satisfy those drives. Why do we have drives? Because we have needs. Needs leads to drives. For instance, we need food, so what's the drive? Hunger. Why do we have hunger? Because we have a need to eat. You don't eat, you die, right? That hunger is a drive that fulfills the need called
survival.
No, that's why we survive, but food, eating. What's the drive to drink? Thirst. All kinds of drive. What's the drive? Or sleep is a drive, and so on and so forth. And then there's sexual drives and so on, because he wants to reproduce. I mean, if that wasn't the case, nobody would do anything, You have to be driven, and so on. The only thing is we have free will. Animals have no free will. They just go about it and that's it. They have no free will. They don't decide. And thank God they only, they have what's periods of where they have tremendous needs, reproductive needs, fine. But in any case, so therefore we need drives, or else we avoid the entire conflict here or contest. You see, so there's certain things that are critical, necessary. So that's what the Ramchal is saying. Why is all this necessary? Because we need to have a dimension called work, effort, task. That's why all of this now becomes necessary, you see. So therefore the Moshe created a place that is Nyone Shlemus and Chesar. deficiencies and the ability to remove those deficiencies. Obviously, he creates us with the ability to interact between these minyan and bishaver. There has to be, I can either fulfill or not fulfill, and just allow the deficiency to remain. So so therefore, the person who who's in between this now has the ability to do what? To actually engage in this whole contest. You see, and then obviously, if the person does that, he will resemble God. You resemble God, you now can get Olam Haba. So again, what's missing here is the connection. The Ramchal doesn't really explain it, okay?
So if someone has a drive to acquire things here in Olam Hazeh, and somebody has drives to acquire things in Olam Haba, how are they that different from each other? One just wants a more ethereal reward.
So then again, if somebody what?
If someone wants to spend their time acquiring in Olam Hazeh, material comforts, possessions, but someone wants to strive for Olam Haba, I don't see that much of a difference because they both are striving. One just has a more ethereal, higher level. It's really chasing the carrot, but not too.
No, because the Baruch has conditions. He wants you to expend the efforts that way, not that way. In the end, the Baruch calls the shots. He decides what he wants. He wants us that we have to earn it, right? Not what do we have to earn? We have to pursue spirituality and not materialism or physicality. He doesn't want it, and he's the one who calls the shots. So most of mankind is in the pursuit of what? Happiness, Declaration of Independence, happiness, and so on. But he doesn't want that. So it's not meaning the fact that we have to be a first cause. We have to be a first cause to pursue spirituality. What is spirituality? What is being spiritual? Spirituality is one of the most abused terms. There are terms that are abused in the English language. One of them is love. I love hamburgers. That guy says that. Excuse me. You really love hamburgers? I like hamburgers, but I don't love hamburgers.
I love myself. That's why I eat a hamburger.
Yeah, but I'm just saying.
I love when that happens.
Yeah,
Rabbi Shaul used to always say, he says, if you love the hamburger, you take the hamburger and give it a kiss. But you don't. You bite it.
Who said that?
Rabbi Shaul used to say that.
Yeah, he's right. You give it a kiss.
It's holding fish. Was gets the fish? I kill it. Kosher.
No, that's an incredibly abused word. And one of the, what?
Very spiritual.
Yeah, you'd appreciate that. You're English.
Yeah.
There's another word that's incredibly abused. Spiritual. You walk over to 10 people, what does it mean to be spiritual? And they will give you 10 definitions. So I'll tell you. You go over to one and say, well, spiritual means, if I hear Beethoven's classic piece, like the Fifth, spiritual. Is it spiritual? No.
Transcending, I guess.
What transcend what?
It's beauty.
It's an emotional experience that you are listening to Beethoven's Fifth, and the brain is sensitive to harmony, counterbalance, all this kind of stuff. We don't really understand how, but there's a certain sensitivity that the brain hears, and it elicits certain pleasurable emotional experiences. That's not spiritual. No, it's musical. That's that's music appreciation. But people say that. I have so many people, I'm looking at a beautiful mountain. Let's see, look at such a spiritual experience. It's not spiritual. Clearly, there's a sensitivity to nature and its awesomeness. What you really sense is the awesomeness of nature. You look at the Himalayas. Wow. Some guys don't even care about that. But, is it spiritual? No. This merely means that you are receptive and sensitive to specific types of sensory input, and that elicits to you certain emotions, and so on. That's all it is. What does spirituality really mean? That is such a hackneyed word. It's beyond belief. I will tell you what spirituality really is. It's a tremendous mistake. Okay. a great deal of the experiences that people have is not spiritual. It's emotional, like I just explained. Different kind of emotional situations and so on. That's not spiritual. So then what is spiritual? Okay, there's a practice called yoga. And they of course espouse a meditative state. What is a meditative state, really? I'm not talking about how to get into what is meditation. Meditative state is where you, in a certain sense, separate from the physical. But they make a tremendous mistake. They think if you separate from the physical, you are spiritual, which is, I can understand why they think that. They talk about samadhi, or samadhi, which is a incredible state of experience, where the self is so contained within itself that it actually separates from the physical world, without getting into it and so on, right? But is that spiritual? No. Samadhi, which is the ability to be in a meditative state, which is the ability to be in a state where you do not sense anything, all your sensories are shut, you don't think, you don't feel. It's a state where you almost separate from your physical body attributes, even though you're still in it, That's not spiritual, that is mental. It's a mental state. That's what meditation leads you to. The concept of a mental state, not a spiritual state. That's the mistake they make. So when a yogi gets down there and meditates, on whatever and so on, and is able to achieve certain meditative states, that means he's able to divorce his sense of self from the physical, where he doesn't feel, doesn't think, doesn't sense anything. His ego is completely divorced from the physical. Okay, that's a mental state. See, a mental state is not spiritual. That's the confusion that they make. What is spiritual then? It's a tap into spiritual phenomenon and experience them. That's ruchnius. You see, for instance, nevuah is spiritual. Why? Because the Novi tapped into the Shekhinah, literally. He was able to, through what he did, he tapped into the divine presence itself, and he created a connection, and he was able to feel whatever the divine presence exudes, gives off. It's like the sun gives off its rays. When you're in the presence of the Shekhinah, you feel something. Enormous, incredible hanor, pleasure, right? They're able to tap into that pleasure, you see, and that's spiritual. But the ability to leave the body, so to speak, or to divorce itself from the physical reality isn't spiritual, it's mental. That's the great mistake the religions of the East make. They do not have spiritual experiences, but they do have mental experiences, and some of them are incredible, for those who can do that.
What about psychic abilities?
No, psychic has nothing to do with that.
Precognitions?
No, that's an attribute of the mind if it exists at all.
So how do we tap into spirituality?
Oh, that's a good question. Now you're asking, how do you get spiritual, as opposed to how do you get...
Learning a Svara and Gemara? Is that spirituality or is that mental?
Well, that's a good question.
Mitzvah so.
One could look at the fact that you learn Torah, you feel something, but if you learn physics, you also feel something.
Yeah.
I mean, when Einstein thought of his theory of relativity, whether it be special theory or the general theory, I thought he went wild. I'm sure he went wild. The discovery of a truth, especially if it's profound, it's called the eureka phenomena. They say Archimedes, when they discovered the principle of buoyancy, he was in a bathtub or something like that. When he realized the principle that water can hold you up and it displaces its own weight, whatever, and so on and so forth. They say he went so wild, he just jumped out of the bathtub and ran through the streets naked. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but it's called the eureka moment. Unbelievable! What is that? People feel that, and they're not learning Torah.
Right.
A guy has an incredible idea of how to make $1 million. He will have a eureka moment, especially if nobody else has thought about it. He goes wild. He's like, I can't believe what I just thought. Is that spiritual? Of course not. The intellect, when a person has a realization of something, and he's able to realize something that is of enormous benefit to him, in whatever way, he will have an emotional experience called eureka. Is that spiritual? No. So we would say, well, a guy learns Torah and he figures out a Tosfos, or he just figured out a beautiful pshat that explains, 5 to 9 or whatever, or he just figured out an incredible pshat between the Rashba and the Rambam and how everything is miyushiv, how everything is solved. He will have his eureka moment. But is that ruchni? Or is that the experience that you feel when you have achieved something which has an enormous value to you? Guy sitting and learning Torah, this is enormous value. So if he figured out something, penetrating, he will have that eureka moment. Is that ruchnius? One can argue no.
Is Kedusha spiritual?
However, it is ruchnius. Why?
Because there are a bunch of puts.
Because, see, that's the interesting idea. It is ruchnius. Why? Because his neshama experiences something which he is not conscious of, really. Some of the neshama achieves a certain shlemus or perfection in a certain area, you see. And that is ruchnius. If you think of physics, not ruchnius, because nothing happens between you and the upper dimensions, or the spiritual dimensions. Whereas when you learn Torah, you can have your eureka moments, and people have that all the time. But is the experiencing itself spiritual? Probably not. But clearly it's a spiritual experience because the neshama is enlivened. Now, somebody can argue, well, there's got to be something experientially that's spiritual. I'm okay with that. But you have to differentiate it. The joy, the ecstasy, the exhilaration that comes from somebody who just figured out something that can benefit him enormously. I can easily explain it from that basis, you see. But other than that, nothing else happens. But whereas you learn Torah, there is a true ruchniistic experience happening. But are you conscious of it? No. The only time you are really conscious of true spirituality, I think, is if you are a novi. That's it. You are experiencing ruchnius truly, and maybe also tefillah. Because tefillah gives you the ability to be dovek in Rabbi Shalom. Okay. Maybe also if you're in a state of dvekus, also. If you're in a true state of dvekus.
Can a goy also die?
Well, that again, that's a question. There are goyim who...
They pray.
They are righteous goyim. There are goyim who work on avodah. Not many, but there are goyim, and so on and so forth. And, there are true oivdim in there, whatever their nonsense they believe in, unfortunately, and so on. So they experience dvekus. There are goyim that experience dvekus, but to their guys.
That's not ruchnius.
That's not ruchnius, no. Because nothing is happening to their neshama. There are goyim over the thousands of years of mankind's history that have experienced incredible moments, religious moments, spiritual moments, and so on, even though they're goyim. But there's no ruchnius there. It's basically a spiritual, a emotional experience of ecstasy as a result of the fact that they have achieved an enormous benefit of something which is incredibly valuable to them. The only thing that will give you a ruchnius experience is either nevuah, and that's direct, or indirect, which is mitzvahs and Torah, because it does something to your neshama.
So you only see the result, but you don't see the
you don't experience anything.
You don't experience the actual result, but you can see the result there.
You don't. Well, that's the question.
Well, you're more elevated.
Yeah. So maybe it has some repercussions.
Yeah,
exactly. So there are things that will happen because automatically you'll be closer to the Hashem. So therefore, you may get greater hasagas, as you put it. Greater thoughts, greater insights. More opportunities, etc., etc. But can they be described as ruchnius, true spirituality? I'm sure there are people that will disagree with me. That's okay. But people have to differentiate between a eureka moment, ecstasy, exhilaration, and joy, intense joy from that experience, which people can have. People have had that, and so on. To somebody who does a mitzvah and feels fabulous, Yeah, because he did something that has enormous value, and he was successful. You see. So therefore, it's not clear. It's clearly ruchni, spirituality, but is the experience itself a normal experience that people achieve in doing many other things? Or is the experience itself spiritual? That can be debated.
A woman,
Anyway.
a woman giving birth with the mother instinct to preserve the child.
Yes.
Do they experience something that's spiritual, or is that instinct a whole different category or something?
You're giving birth or looking at the child that you just
Giving
gave
birth,
birth to?
and then that a mother will try to preserve the child's
No,
life.
that's a drive.
That's a drive.
That's his inborn drive.
And then finally, with Perik Shira, are animals, is it alluding to the fact that animals may have a sense of creatures of a spiritual awareness about the universe, the Bria and everything? And
Again, if you're tapped into the spiritual dimension, if you're tapped into that, then it's ruchnis. If you're tapped into the non-physical, it's mental. You see?
I mean,
How do we know
animals
mental
think that
phenomena?
we have-
Radio wave. When was the last time you heard a radio wave? You can't. You need a receiver. A radio wave is a physical experience, yet we do not, going through this room, you have any idea what goes through this room? Billions of radio transmissions, all kinds of stuff, satellite transmission. We don't see any of this. If these things ever became visible, I think we'd all faint. The amount of radio waves, X-rays, gamma rays, cosmic rays, it's all going through this room. Thank God we don't experience anything of this, So would we say it's spiritual? Of course not. None of this is spiritual. It's just invisible, but it's not spiritual. See? So therefore I'm differentiating. There's physical experiences, there are mental experiences, and there are spiritual experiences. And all the religions of the East have nothing to do with spirituality, because it does not tap into any kind of spiritual dimension. But it does tap into mental.
Well, isn't Tumah spirituality?
Who? Tumah is ruchnis, yes.
Okay, but they don't tap into Tumah?
Well, in a certain sense, yes, But I don't know if I would call. Yes, maybe that way. Somebody can have a spiritual experience by tapping into Tumah, which is Zoyama. It's the pollution of the sun. Yes.
So maybe that's the draw, for the neshama is drawn to Tumah.
Well, we can tap into. We can also tap into Zoyama. We can tap into the chef of the Rebbeinu.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's elusive. These ideas are very elusive and so on. But therefore, that's the difference, as far as I'm concerned, between all these phenomena and so on, and the mistakes that people make, and so on. And people say, well, I just ate this incredible steak. It was sublime. What a spiritual experience.
From the cooking.
From the cooking. Yeah, people say that. His cooking is so good, it transcends. I'm sure the chef would like to hear that, but what does that do with ruchnis?
So what about the idea of Native American and Mesoamericans using
Mesoamerican what? Indians?
Central America, South, using
drugs,
psychoactive drugs to have them.
What they do, yeah, okay. You take LSD, you take coke,
peyotes, whatever.
Yeah. When you into all that, it's simple.
It's a mental.
No, there's two dinim in the brain. There's the brain, the experience that the brain allows you to have, and that's how to generate that experience, right? They generate experiences that the brain can give of enormous pleasure chemically. But it's possible to generate that ideas. Like I say, a guy discovers something that nobody discovers, and he finally figure out something. There's no, the truth is there is a chemical reaction. Now that, they got all these scans hooked up to the brain. Yeah, and they actually see that there are things going on. When a guy's thinking, with the different areas of the brain that light up. It's unbelievable. And scientists now become much more familiar with the brain, the billion miles away from understanding it, So all it is, it's a chemically induced experience. That's all it is. Is it spirituality? No. Again, remember, a person is capable of having emotionally unbelievable experiences. We have that once in a while, joy,
I
ecstasy.
mean, it goes away. That's the biggest
Of
right.
course it goes away.
It's gone because
It's gone,
all-
yeah.
it's-
Well,
it's
because, look, let's face it, joy is some type of chemical, neurological chemical reaction. That's all it is. You know, if you can find a chemical, you can be joy all day long. There's no ruchnius in that. It's the ability of the brain to give people an unbelievable feeling of joy, happiness, ecstasy, exhilaration. But it's not spiritual. It's an innate ability of man to feel and to experience. Ruchnius is you need to tap into something which is a dimension called spiritual. If not, it's not spiritual. But the interesting, like I said, is that there's an in-between experience called mental. And that's what the religions of the East have tapped into, which is very interesting. But they do not tap into Ruchnius.
Are they capable?
Of Ruchnius?
Yeah.
Yes. If they become,
they have that available to them?
if they become Jewish, they can tap into the Shefa.
Some do.
Yeah, you know, so. Anyway, so this is what the Ramchal says. So you need these situations, like I said, conditions, in order to create the whole concept of a task, you know, and all to allow you to do it through free will. And as a result of that, you become a first cause. And as a result of that, you now resemble God, the Rebbeinu Shalom. But what's unsolved is the connection. So what? You know, I want to tell you something. Always, the concept of explanation is always the connection. It's not enough to say, well, A is B. Fine. What's the relation between A and B? Nobody knows. See? And the Ramchal doesn't mention Nam Sufa, which is very interesting, because he does mention it in Das Funas. And Nam Sufa is a very famous concept and so on. Why the Ramchal chose not to put it here is something you have to think about. You know, and so on. And why his concept of Dimyon is not sufficiently explained. Why do we have to resemble God?
Where does he
It's
get,
true.
Where does he get these sites from?
Well, there's probably, the Hidamus B'Drocha.
Okay.
But that's to emulate his ways. You know, and one of his ways is that he's perfect.
But it has nothing to do with Olam Haba, you said.
Yeah, there's no clarity here. What's the connection between this and that? And I looked around for a Meforshim, not too many Meforshim, nobody even talks about that. And mention that kind of concept. Anyway, that's what the Ramchal says, you know, so on. Okay, any questions?
Thank you.
Sure.
Hope you enjoyed it.
Hopefully we'll hit the euro.
What?
No,